Lessons learned from attrition.org.
Attrition Mirror for 2 years. Hang on one second.
Gotta wait for the NPR guy.
Hey, it works without batteries.
Record, Lou. There you go.
Anyway, for all of you in the tape recorder now, this is the Attrition Talk about running the mirror for 2 years. My name is Brian. I go by Jericho online. We have McIntyre, also known as BK DeLong, and Cancer Omega, Jay. As we go through this, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt us and ask so we stay on the topic or whatever.
That's going to be pretty informal, you know.
Very informal.
I haven't seen half these slides yet, mind you. I did the first presentation, which you'll find in your books. The whole purpose of us putting the URL at the end of the slides was because I knew he'd add 20 more slides.
Yeah, the slides that you'll see today are basically a 100% rewrite and about twice as many. So if you're following along in your book, don't.
We'll have the URL will have the new PowerPoint presentation probably in the next few days.
Part of the reason that was done is because they wanted the slides over a month ago, and that wasn't very cool with our schedule. Part of it is I don't work that far ahead. Anyway, we'll start out. I want to explain the image that we have up here. I don't have the person's name, but someone's been doing a collage of images taken off defacements, and this is one of them. They look pretty cool, so I thought it was a good opening. Once I get his permission, I'll put that one in, his previous one up. Like we said, this is an informal discussion. This isn't a presentation even. Feel free to ask questions. Slides are different. Shower some money and booze. And like I said, McIntyre hasn't seen most of these slides, so we're going to have a lot of fun at his expense today. Who are we? We label this as passionate masochist. We love what we do, but it requires a lot of time, and we take a lot of abuse for what we do. The four people that work on the mirror, or used to the most, were myself, McIntyre, Munge, and Null. Munge and Null couldn't make it. What is attrition.org? It's a hobby website. That's something that seems to escape a lot of our viewers. We often get mail and requests saying, you need to put this up, or you should put this up, or put this up. And we politely remind them that once they start paying our salary, we'll be glad to. It's a free resource. The goal of Attrition is to offer raw information. We don't care very much for presentation, style, as a lot of our lovely mail says. The site is ugly. It's red text on black. And if any of you can't figure out how to make your browser override those colors, you probably shouldn't be looking at our site anyway. So, for those of you that are real big into HTML, you're going to hate it. For the first year and a half, I used pre-tags exclusively.
Although we've started converting the errata site into tables and XHTML 1.0, so we're getting there.
So I upgraded to BR tags. Let's see, me, I go by Security Curmudgeon, Jericho. I'm an internet villain if you talk to the right people. We have McIntyre. He's the least bitter of us, but we're working on that. Okay, yeah, see, the color scheme sucks, I know. Who's got the lights? Go find the lights. Yeah, go back to McIntyre's and turn the lights down. Kill them all.
Kill them all.
Turn them all off. They're all off.
I know that 99% of the room is now a lot more comfortable. This is probably how you work anyway. And see, that's the funny part is those of you who work in the dark probably like the dark screen with the lighter text. It's a lot less eye strain. These whack jobs that tell you a white screen with black text is better on your eyes, they don't know what they're talking about. Let's see. Munge handles all of our statistics. Munch actually has an economic background. You laugh, but you should see that beer bottle. It's pretty impressive. Yeah, Munch handles all the statistics. His background is in economics, so he's very well suited for it. He also works in the security industry, so it's not just totally numbers for him. Okay, what is the mirror?
Basically, when I got involved in attrition in February of '99, there are all these dead mirrors out there, and when I stumbled across attrition, I had done some other things for Brian with Errata, and I kind of looked at their paltry mirror, which I think had, 5 high-profile defacements in like 4 years. So stumbling across some of these dead sites, I said, hey, they're dead. Why don't you just ask these guys if you can take their work and put it all in one place, and thus birthed the mirror. And we started, people started emailing us after a while, and
Actually, yeah, the mirror started out with Jay's personal page. He mirrored, I think, originally between 12 and 20 website defacements that he thought were amusing or interesting, ironic or whatever. Then that led to us finding all the other mirrors out there, most of which were dead. They weren't being updated, even though there was news articles about more defacements. So threw them all into one directory, said, hey, it'd be pretty neat to format this up so we have a record of what had happened. This was a year and a half ago, before defacing became a dinner time activity. So that led into developing more of the mirror, the utilities and everything. One of the things that we have to clear up is what is a defacement, and a year and a half ago that was very black and white to us. A defacement was changing the front web page of a site, altering the text, the HTML, the images, basically seeing anything that wasn't intended to be seen.
And that definition stays true for what a defacement is, but for the purposes of our mirror, and if we wanted to have any semblance of a real life, we had to set up some rules, basically, which can be found or could be found at the top of our mirror under our disclaimer.
Right. So now, even though the idea of what a defacement is stays the same, we have to put a lot more rules on what we consider a valid defacement. Because if someone defaces some random cable modem dial-up type box, how many legitimate how much legit traffic is going to hit that box?
Or people who would create domains then deface them, or try to say, hey, I hacked this GeoCities site, man.
We'll be going into how we took the mirror, which was a much bigger process than it seems. We'll talk more about the fine line of neutrality, and the more I started thinking about this, and I'll probably cover it in an upcoming paper regarding the mirror that will cover all of this and more, the ethics or the idea of staying neutral for a mirror, I think is very important, and I think anyone who follows in our footsteps needs to really judge how they're going to run their mirror, why they're doing it, and consider it before they carry on with it. This is a random humor piece for another reason. We have co-location fees, $2,000, security audit, $25,000, cost of mirroring your defaced site, 2 cents, damage to your reputation as a security resource, priceless. On the off chance that anyone in here is with working for MasterCard, fuck you.
And by the way, that defaced website is the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. So, hi, Kevin.
Kevin, you out there? Kevin?
Nah, he's not there.
He's hiding.
The website that was, that's a Federal Law Enforcement Training Center.
That's what I just said.
So, someone get this man more coffee. Anyway, for those that don't know, MasterCard recently threatened to sue us. They're about the, 30 or 40th company or group or person that's threatened to sue us for one thing or another. They don't like the fact that we have some priceless parodies and spoofs up. And the entire thread, the email, some more images, a couple more custom images just to piss them off. They're all up on our news site if you want to check it out. It's pretty amusing reading. We're not the only site that's facing them.
Is that what you mean when you say that you need to consider whether the mirror will vouching?
No, that was just a random cheap shot at MasterCard. We'll get into the consideration, the ethics, and neutrality, and all that. Was that the last one?
Yeah, that's
Yeah. Okay, self-induced neutrality. Who can run a mirror? First off, hackers can't. If you're out there and you're an active hacker and you're defacing pages or not, you are not suited to run a mirror.
That should actually read active defacers.
Right. We're going with the burned-in idea of what hackers is what the media accepts because you can't change them anyway. So it's self-glorification. If you're a hacker running a website dedicated to mirroring this, you have all the motivation in the world to go deface more sites so you can in turn mirror it. Obviously, this is a big conflict of interest. It's also one that will get you into a world of trouble. For those that don't know, the FBI takes a lot of interest in the idea of anyone defacing a site for commercial gain. That also includes security companies that have people that walk the line that may have nighttime activities. And it also has to do with the mirror. We've had our fair share of dealings with the FBI and every other law enforcement agency out there, most of which, when we started, were very untrusting. They gave us a lot of shit about it. By the end of it, they were bitching at us for taking the mirror down, so they eventually saw some value out of it.
We can't win.
Security companies can't. They'll profit, and we're going to get into this more. Big pet peeve of ours is security companies that prey on defaced sites, who we call the ambulance chasers. Same thing, it's a conflict of interest. If you're going to make money off these people being defaced, you shouldn't be running the mirror.
Not only that, but I mean, the kids who deface websites, there wouldn't necessarily be any reason for them to report to you if they think you're making money on them.
Right, that's something that they're a little bit suspicious reporting their defacements to anyone. The rumors out there, the thought that you'll turn them in, whatever. So basically that leaves with a hobby site, someone that's doing it for free with basically no gain out of it. The commentary and notifications that we sent out were supposed to be a non-biased news feed. We tried to present information and we let everyone else write the stories around it as much as we can. Since the mirror went down, we've been writing a lot more commentary. People are still reporting defacements to other mirrors, which we're monitoring and continuing to look at the trends, interesting defacements. One of the advantages now is, since we're not running a mirror, we can start to say a little more about the defacements. We can say, God damn, that was cool. You know, it's rare, but once in a while you'll see a cool defacement out there. It's nice to be able to point it out. And now we can also say, God, look at these gimps. They don't know jack about what they're doing. They're morons. They screwed up here. A little more freedom of speech now regarding the mirror. Any questions so far?
Aren't you HFG?
Fuck you.
No, we are not HFG.
Or any
We are not
other
ULG. We are not.
Or global hell. Notification. The amount of mail we were receiving just before the mirror dropped was insane. We'd usually get about 250 mails a day reporting defacements. For those of you familiar with the mirror, you'll know that on any given day we never crossed over 100 mirrors, or just about there. So each day that was anywhere, basically usually it was 66% of the mail roughly was complete crap. It was didn't involve a legitimate defacement. Some of the interesting types of mail we got, and this isn't one case by any means, is I stumbled across this site. You know, I'm out there surfing and I just went to this page and I noticed it was defaced. I knew your resource was there, so I'm reporting it. Well, when the same person would do this the 18th time, it
kinda
kind of
get
got a
the
little
hint.
suspicious, you know? It's like they're surfing mom and pop's tackle shop, and then they're hitting, uselingerie.com. It doesn't make a lot of sense that they would just happen to find these. If we're to believe the defacers, every free mail provider out there is horribly broken. We would often get between 5 and 15 mails with the same thing. Same identical wording, everything. And the only difference was one header of the time the mail was sent, incrementing every 3 or 4 seconds. And this was the little kid sitting there hitting send, 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 send because it wouldn't reload fast enough on, Hotmail, Hushmail, or whatever else. So by the 15th mail, we'd usually fire back some, nice reply and tell them to screw off, learn how to use email, be patient. Oftentimes we would get mail, we'd go check the site, it wasn't defaced. We'd mail back, not defaced. We'd move on.
We'll get into that more regarding prior knowledge of a criminal act.
Right. So 2 minutes later, they would reply back, ooh, check now. First-time offenders of that, we would do it. We would check, we'd get the defacement, and we'd also send the mail saying, you ever do that again, we're going to blacklist your email address, we're going to make fun of you, we're not going to mirror, we'll also pull down all your previous mirrors. This gets into prior knowledge. Oftentimes, all it was is the kid has 2 windows open, one with mail ready to go to us, one with the script or whatever they're using to deface the site, and they hit enter on the mail before they hit enter on the defacement. We would also get people that would find a ISP or a virtual domain set up where it would be one machine serving out 200 domains. And in the process of every 10 seconds, they would deface another one because it was just copying an index file over another existing one.
And they'd send us every mail for every single site.
One. 200 mails sometimes. Check this domain, and each time it was the same defacement. So that got into a mass defacement, which was treated a little differently. This also was kind of amusing because none of these kids could figure out the Unix find command, which would have done the work a lot better. And the other one that was fun is they would find, they'd use the find command, they'd find every instance of index.html, they'd replace it, and then instead of thinking, how do I get the list of domains? They'd go to the Apache conf file, find the virtual domain configuration.
And email it to us.
Well, they'd email something like that, or they would just grep for the domains. So we'd get a list of, let's say, 100 domains. How many ISP admins remove old domains? They don't. They remove the DNS record so that the site doesn't work. So we get a list of 100 domains and about 30 of them would work. You can imagine what kind of time we'd have to spend verifying these. And another favorite was they would send in domain.com or attrition.org. Out of habit, we'd type www.attrition.org. Reply back, not defaced. We'll take off the www. Oh, wait a minute, why? Everyone and their dog uses www, and what? You couldn't hack that part? You act like it's a different machine or something. And it never was. It was just an alias, but they never could figure out the setup, or if the admin had 2 pages because of the original setup, who knows why. They couldn't figure out how to hack the site that got the most traffic.
Rainforest Puppy didn't do good enough on that script.
Yeah, his script is horribly broken for these kids. He should have explained.
I mean, he's...
And yes, we blame him for 80% of our work. That's why we were harassing him during his talk. Oftentimes we would also get, go check out this domain. Reply back, not defaced. Well, put index.html after it. No. Why should I have to? Well, index.html was defaced, but the server would load default.asp, default.htm, would redirect to a subdirectory. And the main thing there is that what is a valid defacement? We had to dumb it down on our page for these kids. I have to type www.domain.com in my little browser, and if I don't see your work, it's not defaced. End of story. They didn't get that. But I hacked the server and I defaced this page. Good for you. It's not a defacement. End of story. Notification complications. IRC.
We spent a lot of time on IRC in the beginning, and the kids learned pretty quickly where to find us. That's probably, actually we got more IRC messages before we were getting email notifications. And, oftentimes they'd sit there and they'd incriminate themselves and say, oh yeah, I hacked this site. Of course they're logging on to IRC from, their Earthlink dial-up. And in many cases, obviously when they do that, we're legally binded to, report them. Let's see what else. Oh yes, we have this channel, Pound Malvu, on EFNet, and that's, people knew that we hung out there. We have our nice little friend Malvu there, who, I'm telling you, she caused us a lot of trouble there.
Yeah, Malvu's the evil one.
And these kids would send stuff to our bot when we weren't there, and then email us, a couple hours later, why isn't my site mirrored? Well, because you moron, you're trying to talk to a TCL bot.
Or they dumped a channel or messaged one of us, and their assumption is that we watched IRC 24/7 like everyone else apparently does.
Yeah, later they learned after we stopped using IRC that, ICQ and email, God, we just had it wired into our brains. But anyway, we had to stop using IRC because at one point we are hanging in other channels that some of these kids were in, and somebody from the DOD tipped me off that the FBI was getting kind of curious as to why McIntyre kept appearing in all their IRC logs from their raids, and wondering why he's sitting in a channel where these kids are dumping login passwords of government machines. And I learned pretty quickly the definition of prior knowledge, and so we had to kind of stop that for a bit.
So at that point we pulled the bot. We had either Mac or Malvu, which is the bot, logging some of these channels that we knew they would hang out in, and later on we just grep for www, and if it had defaced by it, we'd go check it. We had to quit that. Not only did McIntyre get the warning, but later on other agents told me that our names were in all sorts of investigations for prior knowledge, this and that. So in general, we just quit all IRC notifications. If anyone jumped on Malvu and said it and we happened to be there, we'd tell them, first off, that they're stupid for incriminating themselves, and second, to send us email. And we'll get into why the email we consider a little more private, and go into that in a sec.
We'll also explain why during the Chinese cyber war, the FBI certainly didn't have a problem with us notifying them whenever the Chinese defaced a site, seeing as nobody else could figure it out.
What else did we receive besides legitimate defacements? Yes?
You guys get the privilege of dealing with the same law enforcement folks most of the time?
The same groups, yes. The FBI would contact us sometimes. The other big ones are DCIS, Defense Criminal Investigative Service. We had a couple, maybe one or two, quick dealings with NASA OIG.
Very good organization.
Huh?
I said very good organization.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think, maybe
JTF, the JTF C&D has a couple of good guys. I mean, it's nice. We did at some point kind of establish there were people out there, and just from talking to a few of them, we did find out that some of them are paying attention, other ones are just morons who don't read the site or don't look for things. So
one thing that was interesting about that is, depending on who contacted us and what capacity, sometimes an agent would say, oh, well, what do you know about this guy? Sorry, give me a subpoena, I can't tell you anything. Other times they would approach us and say, I want to talk to you guys about defacements or this type of domain, but I'm not looking for information on the hacker, the defacer. I just want general information, and we would help them with that. Anytime they try to cross into busting someone, that's when we immediately demanded a subpoena and oftentimes cut off all contact with them. And that's where we're saying that OIG, DCIS and the JTF, those guys knew how to approach us. They knew what to say. They weren't looking to bust the kids. They just wanted more insight and understanding as to how the process worked, what was going on, to help with their jobs. Yes, sir.
You keep saying prior knowledge. Is that something we're going to explain later?
Yeah, a little bit. Oh, the basic is this. I'm sorry? Oh, the question is, am I going to explain prior knowledge? And I'll go ahead and do that. In the U.S., if you have prior knowledge of a crime before it's actually committed, you are, as a U.S. citizen, legally binded to go to the proper authorities and let them know what you know.
Or you will be considered an accessory before the fact.
Not only accessory before the fact, but they can also get you with conspiracy. There's 2 or 3 variations of that they can hit you with. So if, John Hacker says, "Ooh, yeah, I'm going to deface CNN.com at midnight," and they tell us that at 8 p.m., we are legally binded to go to the FBI, since it crosses state lines. They would be the ones that handle it, and say, "Hey, this person contacted me. This is what they said." And because of the kind of site we run, and the Mirror being an after-the-fact archive, we don't need to know in advance. We don't want to.
Well,
it only complicates it.
And what also became a pain is any time they would post anything to a channel that had, that even username and passwords to any sort of server. I mean, that was still considered prior knowledge. We didn't know necessarily if they were going to log into the machine or if they were going to deface the website. But, if we knew that information, and that's that fine line that we're touching upon between federal law enforcement and the hackers. I mean, we can't just go and turn these kids in because they'd stop reporting to us. But at the same thing, we also can't, not turn them in for certain events because we get our asses in a sling.
The other technicality there is if you're on an IRC channel and someone dumps a login and password and you log it to your machine, you are now in possession of an illegal access device, which is a felony. So you had to be real careful what you had on your machine. And at any given point, if the FBI had a bug up their ass, they could hit us with a search and seizure warrant, and they'd probably find something in our channel logs because we had a bot at one point logging all of these hacker channels. You think we read those? No. We just grep for www.
Not only that, but...
I'm sorry? Email, yes and no. If you save the email and archive it, keep it on your local machine, technically yes. If you immediately delete it, especially if you report it either to the ISP, to the law enforcement, as long as you cover your ass, they're not going to get you for it because it was out of your control.
And we'll get into our notification. One of the things we did after, when we mirrored a domain is we actually notified the NIPC for every single defacement, and we'll explain that a little later.
Okay, we'll get to a lot more of that, and then we'll go back to questions if we haven't covered anything. Along with the legitimate defacements, we also received free servers. There's a lot of vanity domain redirects that go to the same server. All it takes is a credit card, $29.99, and 1 hour to set up. All of a sudden you have your own DNS entry, your domain name pointing to some subdirectory on this machine. Kids were real fond of using what we assume is illegal credit cards and getting a new domain, setting up a page, and defacing it. Well, that became a pain in the ass to try to verify. It was easy enough to verify the free servers usually. There's 1 or 2 that weren't so easy. We had hoaxes, styleproject.com. These guys are nuts. Once every 2 months, they would deface their own page, and we would get 50 warnings from their users because it was a high traffic site. Oh God, they got defaced.
And that's style with an I, by the way, not a Y.
Oh, oops. That's with an I, Style Project. I'll fix that later. Anyway, so the first time we mirrored it, we mailed him, and he said, "Oh yeah, sorry guys, that's a hoax." Oh, okay. So next time, and the 5th, and the 18th, and the 23rd time, we started ignoring them. We take copies just for fun. Mail servers, smtp.whatever.com, mail.attrition.org. How many people go to those sites? Early on, no one. So we would take a mirror, but we wouldn't put it up so that anyone can see it, because we wanted to track as much of the defacement or computer intrusion activity as we could for our statistics. Later on, people started actually using mail.domain.com for web-based email. So then it was real tricky trying to figure out, well, is this a legitimate defacement? Did anyone go to this server? DNS servers, NS1, NS2, very few cases where anyone would actually go to those for web service. PC dial-ups, DSL boxes, cable modems, especially in the China versus US crap. We had so many of those being reported. The Chinese hackers were hitting them left and right to the tune of 50 to 100 every few hours sometimes. And what do we do? This is part of this big ongoing war, which we'll get into. This is, quote, news. Should we mirror it? Should we, how should we handle this? And then corporate nodes, the E8320company.com. Well, it's someone's work machine, but it had HTTP on by default. It wasn't a legitimate web page most of the time. In some cases it was, but it was for intranet. Don't ask why we could get to it.
Yeah, we had some cases where kids would actually break into a machine and set up a web server on it and then deface it.
That was real popular on government machines especially, because they wanted to show, ooh, I tagged a government machine, but it just didn't have any web services enabled to begin with. So they would load this real tiny web server on and put up their little page, and it's pretty amusing the first few times. Despite us, we would take note of all these. We'd actually take mirrors of them, but we wouldn't post them on the page anywhere to be seen.
We take manual mirrors.
Right. They were pretty silly, and they took away from the goal of what a defacement was, but we would later factor them into statistics and use them for other research. The utility we used to mirror sites was called agit, named after wget. It ended up being over 1,000 lines of shellcode, all wrapped around a single line of a wget call. Sounds pretty insane, and it was, but it did a lot of stuff that people didn't consider. First thing we did is want to fingerprint the remote machine, find out what operating system it was using. This was done so we could get some kind of idea of statistics on NT versus Unix versus this, that, which led into another whole holy war of sorts. Later this year, hopefully we'll be done in time, Munge and myself are working on a paper that's going to compare not only the operating systems that were defaced, but we're going to apply it to public vulnerability information and try to show a correlation between the release of exploit code to defacements. And most people say, well, you know, it was released on this date, defacement spike right after it. It's real obvious. And in some cases it was, but in other cases it wasn't. And we want to find out why. We just found out, I want to say 2 months ago, CERT and some other university, they released a paper basically along these lines. And it was a good start until you looked at the statistics, which were wrong, the economic background, which was wrong, and how they derived it, and their proprietary data pool that they wouldn't share, and everything else about it. So all of a sudden you had this great paper that looked real flashy, and it really said a bunch of crap because you couldn't use any of it. You couldn't source it. You had no idea what information they were pulling from. And also, we'll get into it later, you can't trust CERT for any kind of incident reports.
The operating fingerprint methods were basically nmap, links-head to get the head HTTP headers, and netcraft.
Right. We'd make a call to netcraft. So between the three, agit would then display the results of all three to us, and as we're running the script, we would say, okay, this is obviously an NT box, put it in. This got to be a pain in the ass for some boxes.
Especially since like BSD boxes would sometimes come up running IIS and weird,
that was real common.
Things.
FreeBSD 221 to 4.1 running IIS 5. Most people don't do that. So we had a little bit to work on there. Most of the time it was pretty clear. We actually mirrored the site with wget. The only kind of funny thing there is when you run wget, you can call, I think it's -U option, and that will replace the wget 153 line with a custom line. And we would replace it with attrition.org. If you're seeing this, you've had a security incident. So if anyone read their logs, they would not be very happy, but it would at least give them the first warning.
I can't tell you how many people said, "Ooh, you hacked me," because they saw that line.
Labeling the site. Some sites face, what's the title of the site? Who is it? Usually it was pretty simple to find out. Do a who is, looking through the nick info, and it was very accurate. If it wasn't, or if it was, you know, real obscure acronyms or something, or if it was a sub-company to another, we'd use the Google cache, which is really cool. Whenever Google spiders a site, they take a copy of the front page and keep it in their cache. So we could go back and check that and compare the new page that was defaced with the old one and try to get an idea. The most amusing part is once a week, give or take, we would find the Google cache had the same defacement. And it's like, wait a minute. This prompted me to go to Google and say, hey guys, when you put the cache up there, can you put the date that you took the cache? They said, hey, great idea. 6 months later, still not implemented. I think that'd be beneficial to a lot of people, not just us.
We also found it pretty important because some people, to really try to figure out what the web servers are, I mean, you have the TLDs, but a lot of times when you're dealing with, Navy, Army, and, what else, OSD, all sorts of these websites, you'd have like 5 different parts to the domain name, and since we had lots of federal law enforcement and military people watching our lists, we wanted to make sure they knew exactly what the server was.
That got to be a real pain. So anytime you look through the mirror and you see U.S. Army, we couldn't figure out what the specific machine did. One of these days, I don't know, maybe we'll stick McIntyre on going back through looking at it now since the pages should be back up. Not always. Sometimes they'll stay defaced for weeks at a time. Third-party notification. Oh, I'm jumping ahead. Categorizing the site. That's something we started doing recently, right before we dropped the mirror. We'd label it if it was an adult site, a security website, church, youth organization, like Scout pages. We wanted to start to get more of an idea of trends. AGIT would also do third-party notification. We had this really wicked, ugly routine that I wrote that made Munge cringe every time he looked at it. It was a 250-line case ESAC statement inside that would go look up, based on the country, the TLD. So if it was a Korean site that was defaced, it would actually go to the Korean NIC, look up through that. And I'm sure it could have been optimized. He wanted to move to Perl. I said, no way, it's all on your shoulders. So we stuck with Shell, and it was real ugly, but it worked. We would in turn notify cert.org, NIPC, the NIC contact. So if you looked at attrition.org, it would just go grab the various email addresses, jericho@dimensional.com, whatever else. It would mail them, as well as the mail list we ran. It mailed all of these people the same thing, except for the NIC contact. It would mail a real generic announcement saying, this site's been defaced, this is where the mirror is, this is where you can find more information. To the NIC contact, which we presume was the admin in most cases, we actually had a form letter that explained who we were, what we were doing, why it was a concern, and explained very clearly. We rewrote this thing a million times, changing one word here, there, trying to make it as clear as possible. And that way we got down from, instead of like 30 people reporting us to the FBI the first time we started using it, about 1 or 2 a week after that. The administrators, what we sent them: deface, report it, we offer free advice. We use big letters there. If you would like to ask us questions about security or how to recover from this incident, we will be glad to try to assist you for free. We are a nonprofit site. We are a hobby site. This is free, 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 free. What are you selling? That's really unethical. You want to, sell us a firewall. What? I didn't say firewall. We get the thank you, which were fairly rare. The longer the mirror ran, the more established it became, the more it was easy to reference as such, and that's when the thank you started coming in a little more often. We got the hostile admins. They got defaced, they're embarrassed. The only person that contacted them after it, that's who they lash out at, and that was us. And some of their interesting mail we put up on the Going Postal section, the URL's at the back. Some of the threads that we had were very fun. It honestly made my day. I'd look forward to logging into Attrition to resume the thread that I had with this admin the previous day of going back and forth with these cool flame wars. Reporting to FBI and other LE. One of the things we did in our mail to them is we said, we have contacted CERT and NIPC on your behalf, but please contact them on your own. Open a trouble ticket, whatever they do, make contact, do your thing. We encourage you to do this. Well, I'm reporting to the FBI. Good. Thank you. Do it. That's not exactly a threat.
Our file's big there anyway.
And we had our fair share of people that would not reply to us, but would go straight to our ISP. Oh, do you know what these guys are doing? Oh, they're hackers, they're criminals, they broke into my site, they raped my dog, you name it. My ISP heard it. So the ISP would staff, they would never forward these to us. I'd call them for something else. Oh, by the way, we got 18 more letters, blah, blah, blah. Oh, wow, didn't know you guys were getting that much flack over this. Yeah, we told them to screw off. Cool. ISP is Infocad Communications in Phoenix, Arizona. And those guys rule. They have
Amazingly accommodating.
They have put up with so much crap by hosting our system. DOS attacks, the complaint mail, you name it. They've seen it.
How widespread are they?
Which?
Infocad.
I think they're Phoenix only, but as far as hosting and everything, definitely talk to them. Their rates are very reasonable, but they're very tolerant if they understand what you do. Just be open with them. That's something we had to do early on is, hey, we're going to cause problems. We explained what we did and all that. Anytime new staff would come in to Infocad, we'd have to talk to them. Oh, by the way, you're going to get this kind of crap. And it was educational on both sides. The monitors in response. CERT. The R stands for rejected.
Stop sending us spam.
So go to CERT's webpage. What does it say? Report security incidents to us, right? Something to that tune. So one day I'm sitting there going, you know, AGIT could really be modified and send CERT warnings so that they could build their statistics and track all of these incidents, because a defacement is a computer security break-in, incident, whatever you want to call it. So I started doing that. Mail to cert@cert.org for each defacement. 2 days later, one of their guys, God, stop sending all this crap. Okay. So I mailed back and I quoted his webpage to him and I said, well, if CERT isn't interested in computer security break-ins and incidents, what do you guys do? So he replies back, okay, but can you send them to this address? Okay, so they go to attrition-deface-list something something at cert.org, which means dev null. I need to find that mail and put it up. The whole fact that they said quit sending this mail, and the fact that they didn't read it and understand what it was and didn't say, hey, could you explain this, it really makes me wonder why they're still around. And if any of you CERT guys are in the audience, please come talk to me. I'd love to find out what the hell you do, since you don't do what you claim. NIPC, National Infrastructure Protection Center. This is the FBI brainchild. This is their response to cyber terrorism, electronic threats, kitty defacers, child porn, fraud, you name it. They cover all kinds of crime on the internet. They want to know about all of it. So we did. Sent it to NIPC at nipc.gov. And we got mail back from them saying, could you send it to this address? Sure. So we did. One of the reasons we did that is to establish that we were not some renegade hackers that were encouraging defacements, that we were reporting them. NIPC at one time said that they want to study the trends, do statistics, whatever else. Obviously ours weren't good enough. I really like what they've done with theirs. And one of the other amusing things was they have a 24-hour man center that would take in this mail. And we know that they didn't dev null the mail because one person on one shift would reply to these with a form email. But it was interesting because it was a form email and it wasn't. It was form as far as what it said, but they typed it out each time because the typos and misspellings were different every time. So that got to be amusing. Null started writing back and correcting their grammar. I don't think they appreciated. FedCirc. FedCirc, I was told that they actually appreciated the mail, that they acted on it and passed it on, but they were somewhat of a black hole because of the organization they were. They didn't respond to us. But I was assured by government agents that they appreciated it. So
and they were usually pretty quick. We only sent mail to FedCirc that dealt with .gov and .mils, and we know just from responses that they were pretty quick to contact the right people and get the incident to start the investigation and forensics.
The motivation for contacting them was twofold. One, they had a much better resource of contacting the admins, finding some private out in the boondocks. Second was to report for their internal tracking. NASCIRC, same idea. NASCIRC never replied directly to us, but because of OIG people and admins we knew there, they definitely appreciated it. They acted on it most of the time, depending on what little political circles in NASA you talk to. Foreign certs. Brazil, I don't know if you know, has probably, they've got to be one of the top 5 countries being defaced for a while. And we sent mail for every Brazilian defacement, and we never heard a thing from them. We don't even know if they existed. And they were almost as amusing as Mexico. Mexico cert, you send to that, it would bounce every 3 days. So it's like,
Actually, also at one point, the Chinese cert mail started bouncing, mailbox full.
Well, we'll get into the war later. iDefense and TrueSecure, they monitored us. These guys were great. I mean it. They took all of our information, they reprinted it, they took away the black and red, and said, look at our research.
iDefense High Alert.
The best part is iDefense, in turn, sold our information upwards of $25,000 a year. All we needed was one subscriber to make us happy at that kind of rate. God. TrueSecure did the same thing. They took our information, they put it on their own little press thing, and they spammed out, blah, blah, blah. We monitored this and that, and we monitored this defacements. iDefense, we busted every single time. They would release something that said, and blah, 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 this cyber war of some kind, there's been 15 defacements so far. And you go look at the time of their release, compare it to our mirror, and we had 15 defacements up. And what's worse is sometimes when they would put the name of the site, it would be the same as ours.
And
no
mind
coincidence
you,
there.
Sometimes Brian decides he's going to be a little brief when he's in a hurry and when there's, 30 million defacements. And so it was pretty easy to tell.
Yeah, sometimes I wouldn't put the full name of the site, or I'd abbreviate kind of funny. And those are the ones they would pick up, and it was a dead giveaway. All my mail to iDefense never went answered either. I don't understand.
Until after people left the company.
Ooh, yeah. Let's go ahead and narc him out without giving his name. So someone leaves iDefense, mails us and says, damn, you guys are dead on, man. They rip your stuff off all the time.
And they have a corporate policy from the CEO not to credit any nonprofit group where they take information from.
Yeah. Nice of them, huh? So if any of you are iDefense subscribers, give them hell. Cancel your subscriptions. We'll do it for free. The media. Oftentimes, the media would contact us. Okay, not oftentimes. Every freaking hour they would contact us. And they would want to know about X. X could be a defacement, a defacer, you name it. And it went well outside that. What is a firewall? What is a VPN? How old are you? You name it. So we would explain this. And they would release an article, and it was full of crap.
And they'd show up on our errata site.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So these articles, we wondered, wait a minute, we explained this in very good detail. We gave you resources, we told you to contact this person to verify what we said, and you still got it wrong. Most of the time, these aren't dumb people. So we have to assume that it was an inability to understand or the lack of desire to. They just didn't care, which goes into... Okay, well, on this slide. Deadlines matter, details don't. Misquoting our stats. Because we don't use real simple stats, we go a lot more detail. Oftentimes they were misquoted. The number one misquoting of our stats, NT is more insecure than Linux because there's more NT defacements than Linux. Maybe, but not because of our stats. We don't prove that. We could prove it either way.
There's no way we can show every single defacement that goes on in the world at every single second.
Right, and we also have to take into account all the machines that were not defaced but were compromised.
How many, I can't tell you how many times, back at the beginning, kids would actually say that they're holding on to boxes because they want the cool shells.
So one of the things, I wish Munch could have been here to go a lot more into stats, but we left him out since he couldn't explain them all. If you're ever curious about the stats or want to know more about how we worked them in, how we reached the conclusions we did, which are not many, we left it mostly up to the reader interpretation, mail him. When he has time, he'll respond. And like I said, we're going to be working on a paper that will go a lot more into the stats. We have a lot more motivation with that recent CERT paper. Misquoting staff. You could tell them, it is sunny out. Next day, you'll see my dog has rabies. They just didn't listen to you. They didn't care.
So we spent a lot of time moving from phone call interviews to emails as much as possible, and we'd sit there and we'd end up having to craft our response. I mean, according to journalism, it's not a spontaneous response, but we really got sick and tired of being misquoted because people didn't take the time to understand or ask follow-up questions and would print it wrong, making us look stupid.
The other favorite was, especially when there was a big defacement or the cyber war crap, I've got a deadline in 2 hours, call me now. Mail back, what's your phone number? They'd reply back, I'm not going to call you in Australia, sorry. They wanted us to call them all the time, long distance, international, whatever hours they needed, and they kind of forgot that we're doing this in our spare time for fun. We don't have deep pockets. I'm not going to, rack up my long distance bill for you. It makes me wonder how these people are getting any information. That's the other reason we went straight to email and left it at that. Fluff, FUD, and other undesirables. FUD is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And there's some papers up all over the net about that and how it applies to the media. Yeah, we got some good ones. My deadline's in 2 hours. Can you answer these 18 essay questions, make a breakout of the global hell defacement, and call me before noon to let me know it's up? No. Try again. I'll answer one question maybe. We had some really obnoxious media that wanted everything, and once again, they forgot that they don't pay our salaries.
And in many cases, they'd ask us for information that they see on the mirror, and they wouldn't quote us, or they wouldn't give us any attribution. They'd say, "Ooh, we found out about this."
Yeah, there's also a couple people in the media. They would mail us, and they would have some good questions. I didn't have any other email to work on, so I would actually take time and write a paragraph answer to all of their questions. I'd then send it to the rest of the staff. They would work on it. They would craft their own replies. We'd send back like 15 pages of text answering all these questions because they're doing a long, detailed piece. Next day, we see the article. Attrition said this was not a good defacement. Okay, thanks for the time. That happened quite often and got really discouraging. Hyping it up, which we call Wag the Delio now. For those of you not aware, Michelle Delio with Wired, yeah, she started the whole China cyber war, and that's why we keep saying it's crap.
It would have never started. You mind if I do this?
Go for it.
Michelle Delio wrote this nice little article where she interviewed what we later found out to be a Chinese script kiddie, who said that yes, the U.S. had caused all of this horrible problems regarding the plane crash, and the U.S. was this horrible nation they called caused the jet fighter to crash, and that they were going to start this huge cyber war and shut down the internet. Well, that, of course, set every single English-speaking defacer on China. So all these kids were going after Chinese.gov websites, hitting as many as they could, second after second after second. I could not tell you. I think the entire nation was defaced at one point in time. And they're running NT in many cases. They're no less secure. They're no more secure or less secure than a lot of the U.S. stuff. So of course, what's going to happen? So the Chinese script kiddie community bands together and forms this nice little group to retaliate. What the hell else would you do when somebody's attacking the .gov servers? So they form this little group, and of course they start defacing websites. So the media picks up on it more. I believe NIPC.
No, stop.
Okay, sorry.
Michelle Delio picks up on this more.
Right. And then I can't remember who it was. I think it was was it CERT or the NIPC?
NIPC.
The NIPC validated Michelle Delio's little claims of a cyber war. So the NIPC puts out this warning, and of course the kids see that, this Chinese versus U.S. cyber war is happening, so it even
So now their government tells them to hack. Good one, NIPC.
So finally, some journalist picks up and actually finds the website, which is that the Chinese, use to organize, which is cnhunker.com. So Babelfish, as it turns out, now translates from Japanese, Chinese, and Korean to English. So using, some real painful cutting and pasting and, taking advantage of IE's multiple language encodings, we were able to kind of cut and paste some of the text and find the IRC server that they were all hanging out on. So I log into IRC, and I wasn't expecting it because it was all Chinese characters, but I actually found a couple people that spoke English, and after doing this for a while, you kind of get the hang of being able to ask enough questions to figure out whether they're some kid in the U.S. pretending to be, Chinese or something, or somebody who's actually there. I can't really explain it. Anyway, so I start talking to these guys, and they say, no, this isn't what they referred to them as low-level hackers, middle-level and high-level, and they said, no, the middle-level and the higher-level hackers could give a crap less about this. All this is a bunch of script kids who are, pissed off at the other script kids, and they're just going back and forth defacing websites. Now, unfortunately, because the Chinese, the Chinese script kids weren't hitting, they were hitting all the mom-and-pop sites, all the the mail and NS servers we were talking about. No real damage was done to our government and military servers. But, despite that, the English-speaking hackers just kept going and kept going and kept going. So technically, if Michel DeLeo had not blown this out of proportion with this one article quoting a Chinese script kid, I don't think this really would have ever happened.
Actually, it's even worse than that. And one of the other staff members and I, Shida, we started writing a paper based on this whole China war, and we quoted DeLeo's first article. And we did a timeline showing when the spy plane crashed, when the article came out, and then the next day was the first political defacement that she described had been happening. I was, wait a minute. And that's what led us to say that her article sparked it. And what got even more amusing is 5 articles later, Michel DeLeo says, oh, there is no cyber war. What the hell? She starts this war, and then she finishes it. And
hence, wag the DeLeo.
Wag the DeLeo. Question?
Did you cover any other digital cyber war?
Yes, I think it's coming up on one of the next slides. There's, I think, 3 big political struggles, whatever. Ambulance chasers, which we kind of covered. Basically, we ran some mailing lists that announced certain defacements. We had defaced, which would flood you with up to 100 mails a day, 1 mail per as we mirrored it. We had defaced GM, which was government and military. We had defaced Alpha, which was government and military being sent to Alpha numeric pagers only. We had one other one. We had defaced commentary.
Defaced gov,
Yeah, and commentary. Anyway, all these security companies wanted to know what was going on, so they would subscribe to these various lists. Unfortunately, a few of the lesser ethical ones decided to use it as a new sales and marketing pitch list.
So every time we'd send out, a defacement to one of the defacement notification to one of our lists, these people would go to internet and look up the same contact information we did, and then start spamming these companies with marketing pitches.
And that's one of the things that led to the hostile response of, what are you trying to sell me? It's like, no, we mailed you first with the friendly warning, blame the rest of them. Some of them even used the attrition name and implied it was solicitation on our behalf, and those people felt our wrath. They ended up on a few extra mailing lists that they can't get off. That led to the modification of the warning email we sent to the admins. We had to go back and put a new paragraph in saying, we are not selling you anything. We are offering free advice. However, you are very likely to get email from some companies that claim this, that. They don't belong to us. The thieves, which we covered, stealing our statistics, not citing us, claiming it as their own. Stealing mirrors without credit, which now we're going up on the errata section. We had to create a new subsection. Yes, sir?
If you're having a problem with you guys stealing your statistics, why don't you use copyright stuff?
They are. But
We have copyrights.
we're a bunch of geeks doing this as a hobby site. We're not even a corporation. We don't have the resources to send lawyers after them. Yeah, well, we don't have the deep pockets that MasterCard does.
But now that we're not spending all our time on mirrors, our errata section is definitely being beefed up. So
We're hitting them where it hurts in other areas, and that's their reputation. The errata section, even though it wasn't as widely used and high profile, the right people visited it. A lot of journalists, a lot of security folks, they want to see what's up, what's going on in the community as far as who's being labeled the newest fraud and charlatan. Question way in the back.
Do you ever see false data or do you track people who are stealing?
Let me make sure I get the question. Did we ever figure out who was stealing the data?
Did you receive your reports of false data that you were tracked?
Yeah, oftentimes we would receive mail from a corporate employee that would forward it, say, keep this between us, but this is your stats without your name. And oftentimes it would be lifted directly from our page or would be paraphrased, and we would be the only resource that they could possibly get it from. So yeah, we often knew, and many times I'd confront the company. I'd mail them and say, look, I understand you're stealing our material, quit. That's uncool. And usually we get no reply. And because the person came forward and wanted to remain anonymous, we couldn't resend it to them to prove exactly what we were saying. But that's where we'll hit them on errata. And I continue to harass them pretty frequently. Trends and incidents, military and government. Obviously, that's a big target for defacers. It's kind of a status thing. Oh, I can tag government and military. It's the same unsecure Linux or NT box as anywhere else, but it's got the right domain name.
But not only that, if you watch, like, well, now it's all DOS, but if you see like a Poison Box will hit 3.mils in one day, and then the next day you'll see like TTY0 or, Prime Suspects, they'll all start targeting military websites or .gov websites or, any of these sites. One of them will start a trend, and the other ones will start, copycatting.
What's interesting is, let's say Defacer 1 goes after a subnet and they find 5 vulnerable boxes. The reason it's scanned out the next day is you have 2 more people trying to go after it. One, you have the lame redefacers. They're going to go behind the first one, find that same vulnerable box, use the same vulnerability, and just change the message and put their name up. Then you have the other people that say, well, I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to look for other boxes that I have a zero-day exploit that'll work on. So that's when you would see 3 in one subnet, and then 3 in that same subnet a day later by a different person.
But this need for one-upmanship within the little script kiddie community is a great indicator. So keep an eye on, certain sites, and there's a pretty good chance that you'll be able to start identifying trends.
We had the SadminD and IIS worm thingy. That was really neat. Basically an automated worm that will go around tagging a certain version of Solaris that was vulnerable and a certain version of NT or 2K, one or the other. And it would put up this default message that was by who we later called CN admin. It was just a Yahoo address. It was later discovered this was a worm. Well, someone sent us a list of over 8,000 IPs that were supposedly hit by this thing. We started verifying, and whoever sent it was pretty damn right. Got to talking to them, and apparently when this worm runs, it keeps a list of everything that it tags on one of the machines. So if you can find all of the worm copies out there and you compile all the lists, you'd have a very concise list of everyone vulnerable. This one had been working for weeks apparently and had this master list. So we wrote a commentary piece on it. That goes into the question or the idea of what's going to happen in a few months when more and more worms are designed to do the defacements for the kids because they're too lazy. Do we start to mirror those? I mean, we're not mirroring, but do the other mirrors, do they start to take note of them? How do they handle them? It's going to be a real headache for whoever follows in our footsteps. US versus China, which we covered. Israel versus Palestine, and Pakistan versus India.
Both were actually covered pretty well by, well, not pretty well, but both were touched upon by iDefense, and their little reports on these incidents were a pretty good indication that they were ripping off our mirror. But it's the same type of thing. The interesting thing about Israeli versus Palestine is that the entire Arab defacer community got involved in, assisting Palestine. One of the most interesting defacements, I think, was a defacement of the I'm not sure I'm going to get this right, the U.S.-Israeli, the largest Israeli lobbying organization in the U.S., and I believe it was like GeForce Pakistan or Pakistan Hackers Club, and they found the database of all the email addresses and donor credit cards, emailed a note to all the people on that list, said, hi, we've got your credit cards, and then publicly posted the credit cards in the defacement. There were quite a few U.S. senators and Republicans and representatives that were a bit pissed. Huh? Yeah, AIPAC, that's what it was. Thank you. Yep, AIPAC.
One of the more interesting little tidbits that occurred during the fracas between Israel and Palestine was the Israeli Uber hacker known as Analyzer actually contacted us, asking us to step in the middle of the entire fracas on Israel's side. I don't know about you, but I was in 3rd grade before I realized that stepping in the middle of a fight between two different parties is one of the worst choices you could ever make in your life. When I explained this to him, he seemed, as I recall, rather put off by the whole thing. But it wasn't the first time, and it certainly, I'm sure, won't be the last time that somebody asks us to take sides in these little pissing matches.
And we covered that one. From hacker site to security site. 2 years ago, we were evil hackers, nothing else. We had everything to do with the defacements. We defaced them all 15,000 sites. Damn, we're good. 1 year ago, depending on who quoted us, we were a mix of a hacker group and a security site. Last 6 months, respected security site. Now, the funny part is, we didn't change. We've been doing the same thing the whole time. Who quoted us? Lots and lots of people recently. As time went on, more and more news sources would, and they would actually start to listen to us, quote us with the proper titles, this and that.
I'm telling you, we did a lot of media training.
Maybe that's a new business for us, training journalists. Who wouldn't? There's still a few journalists out there, mainly in the print magazines, the print security magazines, which we probably all read. 2 out of the 3 major ones have a standing policy not to quote attrition in any capacity. But damn straight they'll quote information off of it without crediting us. So-and-so site was defaced, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, how'd you know that? No answer. Tracking hackers, why we didn't. Not our job, dude. Why we could. The defacers are morons.
Do you know how many X-originating IPs we have on our system?
So this got into a real bind for us. Every piece of email that comes in, we have to save because it has information about the defacer, possibly. So we did. We saved it all. And we have some 25,000 pieces of email over the past 2 years.
My mailbox for my old hacked mailbox, I think, is 60 megabyte.
No, we're selling them. Yeah, so this mail would come in with the X-originating IP, you do an NS lookup, and it would be a very specific cable modem or dial-up. Guess who it was? It was their real account. They would hack from one account, but they would mail us from their own account with their own name and credit card attached to it. Admitting guilt. We often said, all we need to know is the URL or the domain name after it's been defaced, nothing else. We don't care, we don't want to know, just than that. Oh, dudes, check this out. I hacked it. I used this exploit. I did it this time. Check now, it's defaced. My name is John.
And they keep emailing us when they didn't see it on our site before we actually automated the mirror. Hey, I hacked this. Why isn't it up? You know.
So these people are good. Actually, I'm going to get into the HTML stuff in a minute. Web logs, hreftail, which I'll show in a minute, and IP tracking. This was really neat. We have a utility called hreftail that just tails our web logs and looks for specific stuff. And we filter out a lot of garbage that we're familiar with. One of the things we look for is the front page of another site linking directly to a file or image on our site. When you think about it, that shouldn't happen very often. Some sites that have like web logs, they might do it, and we'd see them and we'd know what they were. The other times, that was a defacement. And it would come across in our logs, and we'd go check it, and there it was. The interesting part about that is, guess who the first person that checks that defacement is every time? The defacer. They want to know exactly what the page shows. They want to verify it, so they would, and they do it from their home account. And what's better is you want to catch them all of a group, hit, 6 different IPs right there. There's the entire group, because they go to IRC, they dump it to their group channel, and then they go to the other, HackerX channels, and then they dump it, and then you get the flood of all the other ones. So it would be real easy to follow them off that. Out of 2 years of running the mirror, we got 2 subpoenas. We had 20 threats of subpoenas, or not threats, but oh yeah, I'll send you a subpoena for this information. Great, send it over. First one was on Flips and Fuckrag, and that led to either them
Bleeding or being arrested or narking.
They were busted, and they were either, I think one of them ended up with some time, and the other one pled out. And Pimp Shiz, which did the Halloween hacks. Both cases, the FBI agents were very nice. They asked how they could get the information. I said it would take a federal subpoena, nothing else. They said, okay, I'll talk to people and we'll see what we can do. So they did. I got the subpoena and I wrote all the information they wanted to CD, mailed it back to them along with a bill for $28 each, and they paid. There's all of Attrition's federal income.
We are federally funded by the FBI.
Yeah. They didn't. Yeah, they paid by check, not MasterCard. So those 2 checks are sitting uncashed in my drawer. They're kind of. They'll be framed one day, I think.
Where the IRS is.
Huh?
The IRS will come back.
Yeah, I know. The IRS is going to be all over me again. I say again because they've been on me for every return for the past 3 years since I've been investigated for various computer crimes. No coincidence. That's what href tail looks like. Laser pointer. It's kind of a bad screenshot, and I just kind of showed an example of some other stuff we do. Up here it lists all the sites that we filter out, so we have a pretty quick reminder. We have a standard web entry, and we have green what they're linking to, red where it's coming from. And another thing that we look for, which is fun, is CGI attempts, which highlight and give us some, so it's easy to read. Obviously, we would be a big prize to be defaced. We're just waiting for it to happen. It will happen one day. But the kids would go after us every day. It was amusing. Anyway, so watching href tail, we usually had 2 of us that would keep it in a window, and we'd pop back and forth, check it here or there. Okay. Got to speed things up a little bit. Automation, let's see. Why didn't we do a CGI web form? Why didn't we automate this based on the email that was coming in? Think about the email that comes in. People use Hotmail, Yahoo, Jewish Mail, and 50 other variations of it, right? What does it have in it along with the URL that's been defaced at the bottom? Yahoo.com, geocities.com. So if we try to do any kind of automation based on that email, we'd have to have extensive rules filtering out all these sites, or we'd be just doing mirrors of those. So we couldn't. CGI web form, how many people would go put in BS sites and make us mirror it? Couldn't do that either. Lack of time to program. The concept's easy. Making it kidiot-proof is difficult. The issue of manual mirrors, wget isn't foolproof. A lot of times with the weird redirects and
The ASPs.
You'd run wget and you wouldn't get anything back. So we couldn't rely on that to reliably catch a defacement. Anytime we ran aget and it failed, we'd have to go take a manual mirror, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the short. The paper I write will deal a lot more with the automation and why we never went beyond what we did. This is probably going to be one of the interesting things. Where the attrition mirror failed, what didn't we do right? Or what could we have done? Given the time and resources, some of the things we wanted to is a Greets chart. And this was to show on one defacement if John greets Bill and Bob, and then on another defacement, Bob greets John and Fred. We wanted to start to try to kind of map that and show what kind of social contact there is in the underground. Not sure it would have any real value, but it would be interesting to see which ones are more active in the underground, which ones do all the talking on IRC, and compare it to how many defacements.
If you're going to the HoneyNet project presentation, Max, the social psychologist for the project, will definitely tell you that this is a sociological phenomenon in the defacement community and many other sects of the hacker community.
We wanted to have more controlled dialogue with defacers. somewhat of interviews, just more Q&A, but it was difficult to do that because at one point we could possibly cross into association with, it was just a real headache. We didn't want to end up being on the 18th FBI investigation just for asking them some stupid questions. We wanted to find out their delusions of grandeur, why they were doing it. Did they have any real purpose? Was it boredom? We did get some insight into it on IRC when we would run into them, sometimes in email. We wanted to do heavy examination of the HTML, looking at the meta tags, the style, the HTML generator, embedded image comments. One of the most amusing defacements, someone used a WYSIWYG HTML editor, and they didn't look at the code before they put it up, because one of the images was broken, and it was broken because it called /Word documents / his first name / his last name / image. Oops. So if anyone had the time, effort, money, or whatever to go through all the HTML, that would be really cool looking through and finding more about the how they did it.
Yeah.
Let's see, exchanging notes with the HoneyNet project. They had the same run-ins that we did. They would have it in a different capacity. They would do it either sniffing IRC sessions or talk sessions or whatever, whereas ours was a little more upfront, but it would be really neat to compare the notes, something we may do eventually. Further analysis of statistics and trends. Defacement duration, the admin response time. Once it's defaced, how long does it stay up? Well, before we started sending out notifications to these admins, it would stay up for days, weeks, sometimes up to a month. We started sending out the notifications, and it was rare to see a defacement stay up more than 2 or 3 days. Most time they were fixed within a couple hours. So it would be interesting to see how many people are watching their web servers and how many respond to our mail in a timely fashion. Defacement views. Oh yeah, once the site's defaced and they link to us, one of our images, how many people actually go see that defacement? Oftentimes it was just the defacers. It was done at 3 a.m. You know, you'd have the quick rush of defacers viewing it, and then there'd be no legitimate traffic after that. And it would be fixed. No one ever saw the defacement. So that goes back into, is that a defacement if no one sees it?
If a tree falls in the forest.
Who follows us? 2 other well-known mirrors. We have ALDOS and Safe Mode. If you guys want to pick the brain of Safe Mode, Zillion, who runs it's here in the audience somewhere. Is he still here? There he is. He's raising his hand. Ask him obnoxious questions. Let's see, numerous offers to fund us. When we announced that we were closing, various people, companies, whatever, they said, oh no, the mirror's too valuable, blah, 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 we want to fund you, this, that. Most time we said no. Most time it was security companies. They had obvious agendas. We want to use it for a marketing list, and since we would own the mirror, we could do that. It would be our customer database. Said no, go away, unethical. We had one group of 50 plus hackers or whatever. Oh, we've got the people that can do all the work for you. Okay, run your own mirror. You know, I don't want active hackers running around my box doing that. What's next? Commentary and stats, we're going to keep it up, especially the commentary. Since I don't have to spend all the time taking the mirrors, I'm doing a lot more commentary now. As I said earlier, I can start to go into a little more of opinion. We try to list previous defacements of the same domain, try to cross-reference it, link to articles, that kind of thing. Munge is going to keep doing the stats based off the ALDOS and Safe Mode mirrors. Lots of errata. We're revamping that.
We're going to actually start putting the email addresses of journalists and their editors so you can write them notes and let them know what you think they're doing wrong.
Yeah, because they don't listen to just 1 or 2 attrition folks bitching at them anymore. Keep trying to do the newbie security text, that kind of thing. A lot more articles. A lot of the people on attrition, we write articles for various publications, sometimes for free, sometimes for pay. We're going to try to focus on those. A lot of neat stuff. Continued bitterness, sarcasm, and sharp wit. Part 2, what's next? This presentation is a precursor to a larger, more detailed paper which I went into. That's going to go into even a more broad look at the mirror, more insight. Hopefully I'll have the time to go through and clip email and show exactly what I'm talking about. Have to kind of be careful what I quote in there. Don't ask when. It'll be finished when I get off my lazy ass, basically. We promise to get it soon. Questions, comments?
Thank you for coming.